Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the PDQ. This is their GP series 148 PHL. That'll be a reference to the design. 626 satin chrome 2 3/4 with a 4 7/8 strike and a probably means Schlage C keyway. This video is going to be a visual review of the contents of the box. It's going to go over the parts, the installation instructions, how to put it together, anything that I find in particular to point out, etc. So let's get this going here. There are people who like PDQ locks, and what I mean to say, what I am trying to say is, PDQ has a loyal following, meaning there are people that call up and ask for it, which is certainly a very good thing. This is their Grade II lock, and you know, every lock, every lock is the same, and yet every lock is slightly different. And only after really studying the lock, you know, are you made aware of the nuances in terms of how it's actually different. And generally they are different, generally the same in that you drill a hole, a couple of through bolt holes almost always, screw it together and it works, generally. They differ usually in how you adjust for door thickness. They differ in how you screw the interior portion to the outside portion, and sometimes they differ with how the cylinder, how the lever with the cylinder inside of it goes back in to the stem and mate to the chassis of the lock. But other than that, you know, it's a lock. So here's the business end clearly. This makes me think of a Falcon T-lock, is what I think of when I look at this. That inner structure actually makes me think of a Best lock as well. The set screw down here holding the lever on, that's a familiar concept. I'll tell you that I'm not sure what function this is. It could be a storeroom, or it's a classroom. The lever seems to come back pretty nice. Okay. Will retract the hub in either direction. It needs to because it's a non-handed lock. Obviously, we're going to take it apart. There is a lever return spring in there. That's exposed. I'm not used to seeing those exposed. I don't believe it's a problem. Actually, assuming that the manufacturer makes those springs available as separate products, it's nice to be able to get to them, because with enough use, those lever return springs do fatigue and fail. You run 4 million cycles out of a lock, a spring's going to break. And this is a Grade II lock, which just means 500,000 cycles. Looks like there are 3 of them nested together. I would imagine that they're probably the same spring, although maybe they're not. They might be different springs. So let's put that aside, the interior portion. Obviously that set screw is going to allow us to get that lever off, that scalp plate off, to the inside rose mounting assembly that's here. Through bolts are going to have to go through here. And generally I will always gauge the simplicity of a lock when I look at the screw package. And let's do that now. You're going to have your pin tool. You're going to certainly need that. You're going to have your Allen wrench. You're obviously going to need that. You're going to have, oh, this is perfect. You're going to have the 2 screws for putting the lock together. You're going to have 2 screws for the latch, 2 screws for the strike. That tells me it's pretty simple, meaning, you know, there's not a lot of voodoo and black magic happening here. We'll put that aside. Here's our latch bolt. That's obviously 2 3/4. It's going to have some important information on the latch. First of all, you'll notice that that's what's called a floating latch. That is meant to move like that, and that will allow you to accommodate both a square edge door and a beveled edge door. The information that's on there is important to you if you're installing this on a fire-rated door. That's why I have to get my bigger tool here. So what I'm not seeing here Single point lock or latch. Okay, yeah, that's what it is. Oh, it's there. I was looking for the F stamp. UL listed. I can't tell what's beneath it. So there's no label on the barrel of the latch, and that's not a problem because it's stamped on the edge of the plate. Some manufacturers will have an additional label applied. It's on the face of the latch bolt, and that will signify that the rest of the lock is compliant. So what this has on here is the UL symbol. That tells us that it's permissible for use on fire doors. Listed, I'm not sure what the other word is. It has the capital letter F. There's a capital letter F and a lowercase f. We all know that. As it pertains to fire-rated hardware for fire-rated doors, a capital letter F means that it's compliant with positive pressure requirements on a door, and a lowercase f means neutral pressure. That could very likely be important. And then it does say down here single point latch. You'd never see that really. And then the manufacturer's name. Okay, so that's all on there. If you're a fire door inspector, you're obviously looking for that. If your doors are subject to annual fire door assembly inspection, you'll be looking for that as well. That needs to be on there. Whatever lock that you put onto your door, you're going to want to make sure that it's compliant with those requirements. This will be 2 1/4 tall. It'll be 1 1/8 wide. Okay. Nowhere on here, and I said this is 2 3/4. I think I did. Nowhere on here will it measure 2 3/4. But the length of the body is generally about 1 7/8. I can tell by looking at it that it's 2 3/4, because that dimension is measured from the edge of the door to the center of the hole. So another 1 1/8 or so, and you're going to get to 2 1/8, or 1 1/16 anyway. This comes with the ASA, the 4 7/8 strike for use on primarily hollow metal frames. You can use them on wood frames as well. You'll see these, if you're doing a project and you have some wood frames, you may have a hospital and it's hollow metal frames everywhere, or stainless, maybe aluminum, but you might have a chapel in the hospital. Generally going to be a wood frame. The pastor's office, generally going to be a wood frame. You may be supplying a 4 7/8 strike for that. 4 7/8 overall height. The overall width is about 1 7/8 or so. Up over here, it's about 1 1/4. But the way these strikes are measured is from the center line of the hole of the screws to the edge of the lip, and it's about 1 1/4. And that's how strikes are measured. This would be an 1 1/4 strike because the center from here to the lip is 1 1/4. That dimension can change. That dimension needs to be scrutinized for your application. To make sure that you're providing a strike with the proper lip length. And what I mean is, this strike's going to work for almost all instances. But if you were putting this lock on a pair of steel doors and you had a welded flat astragal to the pull side of the active door, this strike is not going to work. You're going to want a lip length of 7/8, no curve. If you had a 1-inch inset on your door installation, that lip length is going to be too short. If you had 3/4 inch applied, or let's say brick mold on the outside of your residential application, this lip length is not going to work. So will this work in almost all instances? Sure will, but not all, and so we need to think about that. Okay, so that's what an ASA, or an ANSI strike is. A couple of factory original look-alike Schlage C keys in a factory original look-alike bow. A C keyway, it's 5-pin, probably the second most keyway common on planet Earth, at least in North America, or probably North America, with the exception of maybe Kwikset. That Kwikset keyway is probably more common. I was told that Kwikset ships 1 million locks every day. Wrap your head around that. Installation instructions are included with all of this, and we're going to go over all of that. A template is also there. Okay, so the installation instructions are the installation instructions, and then timing instructions. If you have a classroom, a 141 communicating a 148, this is a classroom, and a 150 communicating in a 165 dormitory. The timing of this has to be correct so that you get proper operation out of the lock, and we're going to go over that. What it boils down to is you can put this lock together 2 ways, the wrong way and the right way. And nobody knows the right way to begin with, because what are these when I take the lock out of the box? I don't need those. I'm as guilty of it as anyone else. But then you put the lock together, it's like, that doesn't work right if you test it. So understanding the timing on a classroom function is pretty important. Lots of installation instructions, and we're going to look at all of this on the screen view, and let's switch to the screen view now and do so. This is the lock that we're looking at here, and we have not much here in the way of extended documentation, but there will be, in fact, by the time you're seeing this video. So, in no particular order, let's go over the product brochure of the GP series. It's a Grade II cylindrical lock, which means that it has certified to ANSI A156.2, which means, again, 500,000 cycles on the lock. 10 mechanical functions. Smashes the BHMA abusive lever torque test standard. Retrofits all major competitor door preps. I would say no to that. It would retrofit to common or many, but not all. Sargent's going to have their lever prep in a different location. 3 backset options, sure. Assembled in the United States. Versatile trim matches the PDQ Grade 1. So that's important because if you're doing a job like a office building, you're probably going to want to have Grade 1 locks on your on everything. Entry doors, common area doors. However, the closets inside of an office don't need a Grade 1 lock. That would be a Grade 2. What's nice about the fact that it matches is that you can, without compromising the overall look of matching levers, go with a lock that will be less expensive, Grade 2. In fact, appropriate or considered best practice to apply that to a low volume use door, and everything will match. That's nice. That would be the XGT, and the GT would be their Grade 1. I don't know off the top of my head. One maybe with a clutch and the other without a clutch. Typical applications you can read through there. It's going to work everywhere, with the exception of those areas where it's going to take lots of abuse. So this is important. It will work on doors to 1 3/4 thick. I don't know if it will go on anything at all thicker. We'll try to determine that when we look into the how to adjust for door thickness. And what I mean by that is you may have a 1 3/4 thick door that has had plastic laminate applied to it. So if you have a wood door distributor like we have been, and in the past we've manufactured our own plastic laminate, we may be starting with an 1 3/4 thick door that might be 1.71, 1.73, but when you add, let's just say vertical grade, post form, vertical grade, and standard grade, I think what you would use on the top of a counter, those thicknesses vary, and if you're using vertical grade, that could be, I believe, 40 thousandths thick. So you add another 80 thousandths to the thickness of the door, you may have trouble with this lock, and we'll try to look into that. Through bolt door mounting fits a 160 and a 161 door prep. That's not accurate. Well, it can fit a 160. A 160 means 2 3/8. 161 is 2 3/4, so it can fit a 2 3/8 back set. But a 160 also means 1 inch wide in the faceplate. Splitting hairs. 3 back set, 3 latch bolt lengths, 2 3/4, 2 3/8, and 5 inch. Chassis is heavy duty zinc die cast. Investment cast, cold rolled steel, stainless steel mechanism. So there's a variety of base materials and processes involved. The levers will be zinc die cast. Zinc is non-ferrous, it's dense, it's heavy, it's rather durable, it takes a nice finish, and it's inexpensive. To break a lever, you have to be vandalizing the door in order to do that. And I would imagine, they're going to have the stainless steel mechanism where it counts. 2 1/4 by 1 1/8 or 2 1/4 by 1. That would be your 160 prep that if it's 2 3/8, a 1 inch wide. Stainless steel or wrought brass. Beveled 1/8 on 2. This does have that floating front as I had mentioned earlier, it will work on a beveled edge door or a square edge door. ASA standard for the strike, you can do a full lip or a T-strike optional, stainless steel or wrought brass. The lever designs are called Philadelphia, Boston, and Miami. I've been to all three places. 3 3/8 diameter wrought, that's the rose size. And wrought is the way that the stainless has been processed. It's a less expensive way to process, brass, bronze, and stainless. It's like a stamping process. 1/2 inch throw, we talked about that. I don't know if there's a 3/4 inch projection, we'll check. This is certainly a non-handed lock, and I would imagine that all three of those levers are non-handed as well. Solid zinc die cast with a 65-degree lever rotation. Wrought brass roses with concealed screws, that's nice. 2 keys per lock. Schlage C, standard, and other keyways. I'm interested to look at what the other keyways are as well. Available for all keyed functions that you can do interchangeable core, but what interchangeable core? Large format IC is available in the Philadelphia lever only, but whose? We'll check it out. For other lever shapes, contact PDQ. 6 or 7 pin compatible with Best Falcon Arrow. That obviously means small format. Six-pin brass insert cylinder pinned to 5. That means that the cylinder is drilled 6-pin, but they only pin it to 5. You can run 6-pin key blanks into it, and you can pin it 6-pin out as a result. The factory can do keying, and we can do all that here as well. Different finishes: polished brass, satin bronze, oil rub bronze, polished stainless, polished chrome, and satin chrome. You can do an antimicrobial coating, and you would do that on the 626. An antimicrobial would be very appropriate for schools and hospitals where you have the presence of, bacteria, germs, fungus, mildew. That antimicrobial coating will absolutely retard the growth of that material on it, and is considered standard, for hospital applications. Now, as we continue to move on, this is rated for doors up to 4080 in size when you're doing a fire-rated door. It's unlikely you'll encounter a door that's larger, even though you could. But if it's a fire-rated door, this lock is only good up to that size, because that's the largest door that they test. That's the door size they tested it on. And that it is ANSI. It's the A156 series by ANSI. If you went to their site and searched A156, that's the entire series as it pertains to commercial door hardware, and the .2 references lock sets. This is ADA compliant. That's important if you are installing this in a public setting. It has an 8-year limited warranty. I'm not sure how they came up with 8. Certainly better than 1, 2, or 5. So there you go. It's an 8-year warranty. Assembled in the United States with U.S. and foreign material, does meet BAA, Buy American Act. That means that, it could have come out of Taiwan, for that matter. Moving on through, we have our 3 lever designs here. The Philadelphia is the classic with a very heavy return back to the face of the door, and code tells us that that must be 1/2 inch, must be within 1/2 of an inch. The curved lever, and then the straight lever. Cylinders. PDQ cylinders and plugs are designed to interface with the keyways of most major lock manufacturers. So what they're saying is, and it's going to be a feature of the design where the cylinder construction is going to be generic or composite, meaning you ought to be able to pick up a 15996 or a 15995 Kaba Ilko in any of their 24 keyways, and it ought to work just fine in this PDQ lock. There's no doubt. PDQ cylinders and plugs are designed to interface with the keyways of most major lock manufacturers because of the generic composite style design of a standard insert cylinder. 6 or 5 pin. These cylinders are shipped with 2 keys. Now, interchangeable core can be done. That is... Okay, so that's going to be small format. That's large format. That appears to be Schlage, but because Schlage has a pin in the back, so I don't know if this is compatible with a Schlage interchangeable core. Obviously, they have their own. Is it a direct clone copy of Schlage? It could be. That would be small format. Large format, if that is Schlage, Schlage would call that full-size interchangeable core. But the bottom line is they're not saying it's compatible with Schlage. They have their own large format system, apparently. Strikes. T-strike, the ANSI strike we talked about, and then a full lip strike. You can see why we call that a T-strike. That's 2 3/4 tall, and that's 2 1/4 tall. You can do abrasive coating, tactile coating, if you needed to alert someone as to the potential harmful contents of a room, an electrical closet. You can put abrasive coating. There's code that states that there needs to be abrasive coating in stairwell doors of a certain height, stair tower. Split finishes are available, meaning you could do, polished brass on one side and polished chrome on the other. Lead-lined roses. If you have a lead-lined door, you'll definitely need to treat your lock the same way. Dust boxes should not be an option. Those should be included. That's a plastic or metal. I'm not sure what it is. It could probably plastic. That would go underneath the strike so that when you are standing inside of the door opening and you look in the hole that you've created in the jamb, you have a finished look, and it keeps the particulate of the wall construction from encroaching into the living space. Antimicrobial we talked about. Electric strike, I'm not sure what that means. I don't know if they offer a grade 2 lock as an electrified lock, like you can lock or unlock the trim. Not sure what that means. So here's that reference that they gave us earlier about smashing the test, the BHMA test. 1,500 pounds of torque on the lever. Okay. Now, durability test, cycles of closing and opening, they say that it's 1 million, but they've called it grade 2, and grade 2 is 500,000. So I would have to go with what they state in the architectural specifications here, that it's a grade 2 lock. Now, what is nice about it as well is windstorm rated. So if you're here in southern Florida, that's a part of every door that we seem to touch, concern of windstorm. GP series from PDQ, assembled in the United States, 8-year warranty. This is the specification that if you needed to very clearly translate information to someone about what you want, this would be the paragraph to use. They have a cross-reference here from these 10 or so major manufacturers. Okay, obviously that's nice and handy. If you want to have an idea of what this PDQ GP series goes against, it would be Schlage's AL series is here, their grade 2 lever, etc. Okay. These are all very common grade 2 locks. I'm not familiar with K2 except to know that that's Stanley. Sargent, their 7-line, Yale 5300 series. Lever comparison, they can give that to you as well. That's nice. That Philadelphia is certainly going to be the Saturn in the AL series. Now the functions. We're dealing with a 48 function, which is a classroom. Your non-keyed function, passage and privacy. So we're going to focus on the classroom. Latch bolt operated by lever from either side. Outside lever locked by key outside. Outside lever unlocked by key from outside. They could probably, outside lever locked and unlocked by key from outside. And the inside lever is always operable. You can always exit. So what happens here is, if the lever is fixed on, or rigid on the outside, insert the key, turn it around, pull it out, now the lever is unlocked. If you want to lock it, put the key in, turn it around the other way, pull it out, now it's locked. That's called a classroom function. You have a couple of dummy functions here as well, single and double dummy. And that is the end of the product brochure. Installation instructions, templates, and cut sheet. This cut sheet is going to be listed down below the link to this video. We're not going to go over it again because it's just a very condensed version of that product catalog, so we will hop out of there. Now, installation instructions. We're going to go over this paperwork. And what I don't see, yeah, there's a template. Now we're going to hop over and take a look at the templates that are going along with the hardware. And we have all of the available templates listed down below. It is going to be different than the template that you're going to see in the installation instructions referred to here. But this is also scanned and linked to down below. And this paper template is included, but we have it scanned, and there's a link to it down below, or there will be, and this is what that link looks like. They do a nice job in the sense that the template is two-sided, and it will not be obvious at all. But it may be if you kind of studied it. This side of template for beveled edge doors, use the other side for square edge doors, you're not going to be able to tell. These lines are not perfectly lined up, so to speak. If they were, it would be more obvious. You can tell that these lines aren't vertical either. So if this was actually straight lined like that, what I'm driving at is the distance from the edge to the center of the 2 3/4 hole is different on each of the templates. So these holes are not in the same place, because a beveled edge door, assuming that you are going to be measuring on the pull side or the high side of the door, it will actually measure 2 13/16. It's not exactly that, but it is so close it's not even worth discussing. So that's why the holes are not the same. And what I'm driving at, and just to illustrate that quickly, if you have a square edge door and then you have a beveled edge door, just grossly showing it, where you mark 2 3/4 back on each of these doors is a different dimension, okay? Because backset is actually measured from the center line of the thickness of the door, not from the outside edge here or here. So they bias, or they adjust the paper template to account for the fact that you can't measure from the center of the thickness of the door, but you can measure from either side. So they're adjusting the template. So be mindful, use the right template. Unfortunately, you kind of have to look at that. It'd be nice if that was red or some sort of actionable color, but just be mindful. So this will handle 1 3/8 or 1 3/4. So when you fold the template over the edge of the door, on the high side, let's say, I would simply take my center punch, my spring-loaded center punch, and I would bam, 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 bam. I'd mark all 4 of my holes. I would go to the other side of the door as well, and I would use the same procedure, but because I wouldn't drill through the door is definitely not what I would do. The issue with that is there's really a better tool that is super cheap, because you can't, I don't remember what the part number is, because you can't take that paper template and make it work in both places. Let's see, Quickset 138. Okay, that tool I'm referring to okay, it is not here either. Let's take a look. have one just behind my desk, so I had to look it up. We'll look up the part number. Yeah, it's an 89925-001. Whoa. All right, we got it now. So, I've owned one of these tools. I have used it forever and a day, and it works perfectly. And this tool, me making a video, watching a video. That's the tool. And what's nice about that is it has the 3-degree angle on it, so you can switch it over to the other side because it doesn't have the 3-degree angle. It's square, so it's compensating for the fact that you've got a beveled edge door, and it's always right every time that I use that tool. And the same concept about the backset being in the center. So that part number was 89925-001. Okay. So that's the tool that I've always used, that little aluminum angle, and I just mark my holes, and I'm literally off to the races. And that will give me my holes. Now, it doesn't give me, of course, my through-bolt holes. For that, you're going to need a different template, a different tool. If these are 1 3/8 from the center in each direction, I'm going to measure that now, then you can use the Schlage template. The Schlage boring, yeah, that's 1 3/8. So Schlage manufactures their I think it's an M204-198. Right on. Yeah, this would be what I would use for doing those through bolt holes. Very inexpensive tool. If you are easy on the bushings, it will last for dozens or hundreds of doors. I personally use one, and I've used it hundreds and hundreds of times. So that would be an easy way to go about doing that. And then at the end of the day, if you just want to buy a tool to do it, that would be the, well, Best may still make one. Kwikset has recently discontinued their 138 tool. A lot of people really love that 138 tool. I'm not a fan of kits to bore doors. I just see them as unnecessarily mechanical. They're just a contraption that just takes longer than it's worth. Maybe because I'm extremely familiar with prepping wood doors, but my opinion on that is in the minority. You know, people that are locksmiths or handyman, they won't prep a door without a hinge butt template kit. You know, they're mechanically inclined. They know how to work the tool. I'm thinking, mark my holes, 2/1/8 bimetal Lennox hole saw. You know, it goes pretty quickly. So back to our lock and our paper templates. So just be mindful of which template you're using. You don't want the holes to be off. That's to be absolutely sure. Now, what would be nicer is if they had 3 lines vertically here. Bear with me as I fix the blue problem. What would be nice is if they had 3 vertical lines here. Low side, square edge door, high side. And then you'd have 3 vertical lines here. It would look like a disaster, but you know, if you studied it for just a few seconds, you'd figure it out pretty quickly what you were doing. Now, I'm not going to go into how to prep the door. If you need to discuss how to machine a wood door or even a steel door for that matter, I'd be happy to walk you through the process of at least how I would go about doing it. But that's your paper template that's included with all of this material right there. They say that the lock is preset for 1 3/4. That template, I think, is used to also determine that as well. Yeah, it is. We'll go over that as well. So let's go through quickly the templates that are here. The manufacturer has about 7 templates or so that apply to different variations of this. This is going to be your typical prep 2 3/4 or 2 3/8. They're showing us here that it's 2 3/4. This would work for 2 3/8 as well. Oh, actually it won't, because they don't have a 1 1/8 wide face on the latch. So this will be your 2 3/4 template only. In no particular order, obviously. Let's jump to a 2 3/4 with a with a radiused corner latch. You can buy that apparently. You can do a 2 3/8, and that's where that changes to 1 inch. A radiused corner, that's a 1/4 inch radius, by the way. That's achieved when you're using a 1/2 inch diameter router bit. A T-strike prep, a full lip strike prep, and then of course we have our ASA strike. If you're doing it in a wood frame, this would be important to know. A hollow metal frame is obviously going to be already prepped for that material. Most usually it is. So what we have here now is a definition, a series of definitions on the lock parts. From the outside, you've got your outside lever, your cylinder with its key, the rose scalp, the scalp plate, the outside rose mounting. Outside mounting plate, we're going to discover what that actually does. The chassis, that's the business end. The inside mounting plate, the inside rose mounting plate, scalp plate, inside lever. Okay, 2 screws to hold it all together. That's it. Now, adjusting for door thickness, verify adjustment for door thickness. It's factory preset at 1 3/4. And what they want you to do is to adjust that threaded plate on the door itself. So obviously that's how they're doing it. A is for 1 3/4 factory preset. B is for 1 3/8. So I think what they're also showing us here is how to adjust the length of the button itself on the shaft. This is a classroom lock, so it doesn't have this, but there'll be a little spring-loaded tab in here that you're going to push in and then slide your button back and forth. That's how you'll go about doing it. Okay. First position for 1 3/8. Second position for 1 3/4. I'm thinking you're popping that out, and the third position is not used on this lock. It may have been capable of handling a thicker door range at some point. So I think what we'll do is let's switch back to the, by all means leave this open, let's switch back to the camera view and take a look at door thickness adjustment. And door thickness adjustment is generally one of the ways how locks will differ from each other. So we don't need to remove that interior lever just yet, so I'm going to leave it right on the side. And obviously they're talking about these threaded plates here, these mounting plates they refer to them as. And I don't see anywhere here where they're calling out that thickness range. But they do... Apparently it's done on the interior side only. So adjust inside mounting plate as follows. Remove inside rose assembly. Thread the mounting plate until top of plate aligns with center of dots next to imprinted A or B. Oh, there they are. Yeah. A and B. Okay. Yeah, it's faint. You might need your larger hammer like I do. Oh yeah, they're clearly there. A and B, okay. So A is literally going to be be careful, don't cross thread. That will ruin the lock. And I'm turning it backwards so I can get it seated. And I can tell that I just seated it properly. Then at that point it'll thread. So you can see here, not really, but the A, that's not going to show up on the camera. Right there, it's not going to take... one and a half revolution to get that seated properly. That's it. That 1.5 revolutions is all it took to get it seated properly. So B is for your thinner door. Yeah, I mean, you know, right there. It's a little shy an 1 3/4, but that outside chassis is going to sit a little bit proud off of that. Okay, so that's set. Now, that is, you know, that grade 2 PDQ. That's how that goes together. Now let's continue on in the installation instructions, and we'll switch back to the screen view as we need to, but I don't think we will need to just yet. I'm going to take the chassis off. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to leave that in place. So what I want to do now is demonstrate to remove cylinder lever. You probably have no reason to remove it at all. If all you're doing is slapping the lock on, don't take the outside lever off. You can if you want to. You're just going to have to put it back on, but we're, of course, going to do that. Insert key into lock, step A, insert key into lock, and rotate it 45-degree clockwise and hold it there. I don't know if you'll actually have to hold it there. You can probably just place it there. Oh, no, you have to hold it there. Aha. You really don't. So let's just demonstrate this. This outside lever is rigid. I put the key in. It's rigid. I put the key in. And I rotate it 360 degrees. I heard a click. Now it's unlocked. Retracting that retractor. Turn it 360 degrees the other way, pull it out, now it's locked again. That's a classroom. The point is you can make that go 180 in one direction, back to 0, 180 in the other direction, back to 0. The lock won't work. It needs to be in. You cannot turn it without... You can turn it the other way and you'll pull the latch back. But other than that, you can't turn it. You can't turn it past 45. You got to go 360 degrees, and as you do that, right there. Right there. That's what's changing the function. And it has to rotate 360 degrees. So key, insert key, yeah, if you're gonna have it in this orientation, turn it and then hold it turned. So I will do that, and that's when we need our pin removal tool. You're going to want to hang on to that. You might need it at some other point. So you got to turn that key and hold it turned. You know, obviously I'm trying to not let anything else fall out. That tool is going to go in that hole in the stem, and as I push that in, I can feel that I've depressed the tab. Then that whole lever is going to come off. Now here's the thing. Study your location of your tailpiece. It's basically vertical. So is the area inside of there to receive it. Okay. Now if I were to take a screwdriver and turn that in there and turn that, I can go 360, 360, 360. But if I were to put that in there and turn it 180s and take the screwdriver out and put the lever back on, the lock's not going to work. So the bottom line is, and this is the same concept with deadbolts. If you put your key in the deadbolt and throw the deadbolt and then bring your key back to take it out and the latch bolt comes back in, you simply have it timed incorrectly. So if you find that you're 180 back to 0, 180 back to 0, simply take the thing off, rotate the thing to get it 180 degrees, retime it, then slap it back together. So now would be the time to look at the timing instructions, because replacing the cylinder is, you know, if you're going to take the cylinder out, like you're going to replace this, or repin it, rekey it, that does not appear to be a Kaba Ilko cylinder manufactured by them, but it's, you know, it's as much of a clone as anything else. Then you're going to have your cylinder retainer tool. I don't think they actually name this part. Oh, they do. Cylinder stopper, they call it. That has to be down in that prep there. So let's get the cylinder in. The face is seated. Then my cylinder stopper has to go in, and I have no idea how that went in. There's only going to be one way that it'll ultimately go in and be straight. Yeah, it looks like I just matched the profile together. Looks like I got it in right. So what that does is it prevents the cylinder from moving. Now if I push it, it'll come out. At this point, I'm just going to insert my key, and I'm going to leave it there. Now, in the installation instructions, there is another page called the timing instructions, and let's just read that. And they have a definition of the functions on page 2, which we won't go back into. The timing instructions. You should be looking at a page called timing instructions. To install a new cylinder, lever must be removed. Begin by rotating the key 45 degrees. Insert the pick into the hole in the front of the lever as shown while pulling out on lever. Interchangeable core cylinder, it's not necessary to remove the lever. Don't. No reason to take the outside lever off on a interchangeable core. But it could still be timed incorrectly. Before installing new cylinder or core, ensure locking mechanism is in the correct position by rotating shaded spindle in the above illustration clockwise with a small screwdriver until it stops. Okay, so what they're saying is, I had it this way before because that's how we took the lever off. Well, this is what the lock's supposed to look like. So what they're saying is, if your timing doesn't work, insert the screwdriver in there, or just take the cylinder. If you don't want to use a screwdriver, just take the cylinder, set it in there, put your key in, and then rotate it. Okay? Same thing. Now, let's do this. It's timed correctly right now. Okay? It's timed correctly. If I were to take that key and rotate it 180 degrees, pull the cylinder out, now I'm timed incorrectly. I'm going to put my key back the right way. I'm going to stick that in there. Let's see how it works now. Yeah, I can go 180 in one direction, and I can go 180 in the opposite direction. And I can take my key out. The problem is I can't reliably leave it in the locked or unlocked position that way. It might work. Right now I've got it locked and all the way turned clockwise. I bring it back to 180. It's still locked. I can take the key out. Key goes back in. Turn it counterclockwise. It switches. Go back to 0. Take the key out. Now it's unlocked. It's just I don't believe it's going to work reliably like that. So I wouldn't risk doing that. I just turned it 180. I'm bringing my key back, and now I should be in the 360 mode, like I was. 360, key out. Yep, we're all good. So I've retimed it correctly. Again, it may work like that, but when you turn it 180 and then bring it back, as soon as you put the key back in and start going this way, it immediately clicks to reset the combination. So because it's so close, I could see where if you have a bent tailpiece, if people have been turning on that key for a long time and that tailpiece is no longer straight and it's slightly bent, yeah, the lock's not going to work. You get too far and you just keep turning the cylinder, you can bend the tailpiece. So step 2 was before installing new cylinder or core, ensure locking mechanism is in the correct position by rotating it clockwise until it stops. We've done that. Reinstall the lever or core. Ensure key is in the home position when installing the lever, position where the key can be pulled out of the cylinder, right? Rotate the key 45 degree counterclockwise after cylinder tailpiece has engaged in locking mechanism to continue to push the lever onto the spindle. Ensure key is in the home position when installing. Okay, so what they're saying is ensure the key is in the home position. That's the home position. You're going to push the lever with the cylinder in it down until the tailpiece goes into that horizontal slot. At that point, you'll be able to turn the key and you'll retract the retractor, and then you turn it and then continue pushing on. The reason that happens is because that spring-loaded tab that's there, right at the tip of my finger, okay? As I push on that, you can see that it moves. There's a little dimple on it as well. Well, actually, yeah, there is. There's an arrow shape. When that tailpiece is in there, that spring-loaded tab cannot be depressed. It can't go in. To push the lever down onto the stem, that tab has to move. When you put the key in and you turn, well, it said counterclockwise. When you turn it counterclockwise, now I have enough room to push in far enough so that the lever can go all the way on. That's why you have to, and that's another reason, well, all locks, not all locks, many locks go back together the way that this PDQ lock does. Not all. There is a Marks. The Marks Grade 1 goes back together a different way. I've got the cylinder in. I'm just using the key as a handle. I'm going to bring it all together. I'm going to wiggle it a little bit. I cannot push that all the way down. I think I'm engaged. I'm definitely engaged. I can then turn it 45 degree and then push it down because I've given myself enough room to move that tab down. At that point, you're going to want to tug on that and make sure it works. At that point, you're going to want to make sure the lock is unlocked. 360, take the key out, locked. Make sure that works. I did a job one time for a client. Went to their house Friday at like 2 o'clock. By 5 o'clock, I was done rekeying all the cylinders. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm so glad you came at the last minute kind of stuff. We're moving in tomorrow. Need the locks rekeyed. Friday traffic, northwest side of Chicago. Drive about 3 miles in a half an hour. Hey, my phone rings. Hey, the knob came off right in my hand. I'm like, I first thought, well, is the lock broken? And I realized it was the last lock. I didn't tug on it, and I didn't seat it all the way down. So always tug on it. Yeah, I drove back. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Bam, bam, done. Okay, thank you. It was that quick. My temptation was to tell them how to do it over the phone, but, you know, they paid me. And I thought it was just less than professional to say, hey, do you mind saving me the trip to drive back? You know, I didn't do it right the first time, so I went back and made sure it was done correctly. And that's how the timing works. So we're gonna say that part of this is hunky-dory. Back to the installation instructions. We talked about at length the removal of the cylinder in the lever, putting it back on. So that all that section is done. Everything else on page 2, with the exception of installing the lock, now has everything to do with just mortising the door for it. Different conversation. Love to have it with you if you would like to. Installing the outside trim. So very, very simply, this is going to go... What do you got to do here? Okay, so to get this lock installed, you obviously have to take that plate off. That's going to go through the outside. Okay? At that point, once this is all sticking through the hole, that plate's got to come back on. And I hold it this way just because it's easier for me. And again, just center it. It was like a 1.5 rotation. You're going to want these bird's mouth preparations to be in alignment with your through bolts. At this point, now it's on the door and it's not going to fall out of the hole. Okay, at this point, you're going to need your Allen screw, your Allen wrench, to remove that set screw. I'm just going to loosen it. Turn it a half turn until the lever comes off. Or maybe it needs to come all the way out. I don't know. Okay. It doesn't need to come all the way out, that's for sure. You don't want to lose it. Yep, you know what? It does have to come all the way out because that did just tip out. It's got a special tip to it. Okay, so be mindful of that. You don't want to lose that. That'll keep you from getting home on time for dinner. Your scalp plate is going to come off. I just literally just kind of pushed it off. Okay. That area that will receive the set screw is where that little notch in the scalp plate will mate up to. That will go towards the hinge side. This will just come together like this. Your posts have to line up. Okay. Then at this point, your two screws are going to go right through the outside, and that's got to be die-cast zinc. Right through there. Tighten them down. Do it by hand. Don't over-tighten it. Otherwise, if you over-tighten it, the lock's probably not going to work very well. It'll be a little stiff and rigid. The rose goes back on. It just pushes back down. Nice and neat. The lever comes on. At this point, your set screw, I'm just going to put that down for a moment. Your Allen wrench and your set screw, it has some Loctite on it, or thread lock. That'll go right into that hole. Obviously turn it clockwise until I'm not going to turn it any further because I don't want to wear the Loctite off prematurely, but you would then tighten that up until you're done. Okay? So we've just used those two long screws with Loctite on it, or thread lock. The two bigger screws, those are the screws that'll hold it all together. These two 1224 flat undercut head combination wood machine screws, that's for the strike, assuming you have an ASA ANSI strike. The two 832 machine wood combination flat undercut head, that's for your latch bolt. You need two of those. Your pin tool, your Allen wrench, your two keys. That's everything. At this point, the lock is now reattached. The lock is now installed on the door, and there's really nothing else to go over in terms of this lock. I will tell you my opinion about the lock, if you like. I like the design in the sense that I like the design in the sense that you install it from the outside, then you thread your plate on until it stops, and you bring the bird's mouth preps, vertical, so you can get your screws through. But measuring this, I'm really convinced you are not getting anything beyond 1 3/4 out of this. So if you've got a door that's 1.8, that's going to be a challenge. You're not going to get any more out of this. Are you going to bump into that? You could. You're going to if you're going to do a job like a high school, not that you would not use grade 2 locks, but what kind of doors could you have? You could have 18 gauge hollow metal doors in some back of house. You could have 14 gauge steel stiffened doors. That's for sure going to be 1 7/8 thick. You're going to have fire rated wood doors. Those will be 1.71 thick. You could have wood doors that have laminate on them. Nursing homes, laminate is everywhere on the doors, or historically always was. If you're going to take a door that's 1.72 and add, a couple of sheets of vertical grade laminate, you're going to have a problem. I would be concerned with that. I've never heard of that being a problem with this lock. I would like to have seen it manufactured for 1 3/8 to 1 7/8, because then I know I'm going to make that all work. But I do like the threading of the rose mounting plate, and then my two screws will go on after my spring chassis, my inner rose mounting chassis goes in. When you install this, the latch bolt has to go in first. And you're going to want to make sure that the latch bolt works freely. Nothing holds it up. It should spring out exactly the same way it does when it's not installed. This sleeve is there if you've got a 1-inch hole. If you have a hole that's a little bit smaller, you can pull the sleeve off. But generally, you'll have that sleeve installed. There's nothing else to go over on this lock. Let's Let's see what other documents we have. Yeah, none. We have hit it all. Now, there is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page. Let's switch back to the camera, the screen view, and just wrap this up. Okay, this is the item that we're working on, and that link is here. You go ahead and click that up, and you'll find not only whatever PDQ hardware that we sell, but a link to their website, as well as a link to their product catalog. That product catalog's nice because their PDQ has more than just grade 2 levers. They have door closers and other items. Exit devices, obviously. Then, of course, a link to their website, which I found to be easy to navigate. I pulled all the supporting documentation off of it. Like I had said earlier, there are people who are definitely loyal clients of PDQ, and to them I applaud. You know, they have this occupancy indicator style, pardon me, not occupancy indicator, but classroom security. So you might want to look into what they're doing there. They're obviously proud of it being assembled in the United States. I would be too if I was them. I'm not sure what these reference tools are. Okay, yeah, so obviously reference tools. Very handy little site. So I think that I might oh, that's definitely Schlage. Yeah, they're not calling it Schlage. Yeah. Let's take a look at their high security cylinders. Now, this is worth a quick mention. UL437, that is, if they have cylinders that meet that requirement, that is an exceptionally stringent requirement that adds a tremendous amount of cost to the cylinder. But the reason it does is because it has a substantially greater amount of resistance to all forms of surreptitious bypass and to attack. Drilling, picking, impressioning, sawing, twisting, torquing, everything. And they say it right here. These optional cylinders feature a minimum of 11 anti-drill pins, stainless steel pins, and there is 2 hardened anti-drill pins. More about all of that here. All PDQ high security cylinders feature an exclusive and proprietary floating sidebar. That's fascinating. I don't know anything about a floating sidebar other than obviously Medico would have a sidebar. Other people do. I don't know how. I'm not familiar with how PDQ does a sidebar. ASA has a sidebar. Medico obviously has a sidebar. Fascinating. I will be looking into that further. But if you wanted a cylinder that gave you the greatest resistance to attack, you'll want one that's UL437 rated. So be mindful of that. All right, let's wrap up this video on camera. So I certainly feel as if I have a better appreciation over PDQ than I did at one time prior to just reviewing this lock. Seems like a great lock. They're heavy. They're over 5 pounds, this lock. You know, zinc, a lot of zinc in it, obviously, and zinc is very heavy. But nonetheless, the lock weighs over 5 pounds. And seems like a quality item. I don't know if I've ever called the factory for technical support or anything in the past, so I can't add to that. You know, I would imagine in today's climate where having exceptional customer service is just absolutely a foregone conclusion that they would be, you know, part of, you know, providing that level of service as well. And it's probably why people are loyal to them. They probably have communicated with the factory and found out that they can get good customer service. Any questions on the PDQ Grade II GP series, lever lock, cylindrical lever lock, or any other PDQ product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.